As Carl Jung said, there is a shadow in each of us. But how can this shadow lead us to evil? Today, we will explore Philip Zimbardo's Lucifer Effect and this dark side of human nature. The Lucifer Effect is a concept popularized by psychologist Philip Zimbardo. It is based on the findings of Zimbardo's famous Stanford Prison Experiment. The facts that emerge from this are quite shocking, because the environment we are in, the roles we adopt, and the authority we obey can turn even the most virtuous individuals into people who harm others. Consider the countless examples in history, from guards in Nazi concentration camps to soldiers who carry out ethnic cleansing to silent bystanders to horrific events. These people are not born evil. On the contrary, they are ordinary under normal conditions. Even people with certain values find themselves in such environments, and this dark potential is revealed. So why is this so? The answer lies in the combination of various psychological and social forces that shape our behavior. First, let's think about the power of authority. Stanley Miles observed that in obedience experiments in the 60s, participants gave electric shocks to other people when directed by an authority figure, and even continued to do so even though they thought they were causing severe pain. The most striking aspect of this experiment is that the vast majority of people are so close to compromising their moral values because the authority demands it of them, because someone we can ignore their conscience wants it, saying for the greater good, how close are you to compromising your own ethics? What would you do if you were asked to ignore the principles? Another critical factor is the concept of dehumanization, which refers to dehumanizing people. It labels others as enemies, subhumans, or somehow not like us. It becomes easier to justify cruelty towards them. Propaganda. We see that this method is frequently used even in war rhetoric or everyday disagreements. When you start to have difficulty seeing the other person as a human, harming him, her, creates less remorse. Look at today's political and social discourses. How many times have entire groups of people been othered with a few simple labels or cliches? However, dehumanization is only part of the story. Social roles and group dynamics are equally strong. In Zimbardo's Stanford Prison Experiment, randomly selected university students were assigned the roles of guards or prisoners. In the very first days, those in the guard role began to use psychological violence and pressure. The most frightening part is that students forget their individual identities and fulfill the requirements of the roles assigned to them without questioning. From here, we come to the question, are we really constructing our identity freely or in? Are we playing the roles imposed on us by the systems we are in? All these powers, namely authority, dehumanization, and group dynamics, continue their existence silently in our daily lives. They direct our thoughts and behaviors in schools, workplaces, social media, and even within the family. Realizing these is the first step to resisting them. But there is also the issue of a critical threshold. When a person we might call good crosses that line and behaves in an irreversible way, this moment is usually imperceptible. Small concessions begin, turning a blind eye to a small injustice. Making concessions thinking that nothing will happen once. Over time, these small decisions accumulate and pave the way to a great moral collapse. Stop and ask yourself, have I ever given in just because I thought it was more comfortable to remain silent, even though it contradicted my values? Look at the consequences. Maybe you have triggered the language that can prevent it before it even started. Now let's address a deeper question. Are some people immune to the Lucifer effect? The answer is, unfortunately, that none of us are completely immune. Personality traits. For example, there are many theories that qualities such as high empathy, self-awareness, or courage can make people more resilient. But still, right or wrong, almost all of us run the risk of being caught up in these dark dynamics. In fact, each of us is prone to both great good and great evil. The shadow concept mentioned by Carl Jung reflects this reality. Our consciousness reflects the dark, repressed aspects that we keep away from. When we experience outbursts of anger, jealousy, or hatred, they surface. When left uncontrolled, This shadow can turn into a dynamic that accelerates the Lucifer effect. But the good news is that awareness is our strongest defense. When we understand why we are being dragged into evil, we gain the power to stop it and act more morally. The mechanism that psychologist Albert Bandura calls moral disintegration is one of the most insidious of this effect. In order to justify his harmful behavior, the individual produces excuses, such as everyone already does this or that. Some sacrifices are inevitable on the way to the goal. In this way, he creates a psychological distance between himself and his action and wants to get rid of his guilty conscience. This situation is also encountered in daily life. For example, a student may cheat saying that nothing will happen once. A manager may treat his employees unfairly by saying that this is a must for the sake of the company's goals. The real danger is the contradiction with one's own self. Therefore, an awareness that we can call moral alertness or moral vigilance. It is critically important to develop the work we do that senses that the word or action is wrong deep down. Or do we really question this? The antidote to dehumanization is empathy. Empathy allows us to perceive the other person not just with a label, but with all their human aspects. If we see them as individuals with hopes, fears, and dreams, it becomes more difficult to harm them. Witnessing people's lives through means such as art, storytelling, and cinema prevents alienation and reminds us of our common values that unite us. Of course, this should not only remain at the individual level, it is equally important at the societal level. Because systems and structures can either mobilize the general masses in a good direction or deviate them in the opposite direction. Think about what kind of leader we follow or what kind of leadership we display ourselves. We may not have an official title or status, but we definitely have an impact on our family, colleagues, and social environment. Do we use this impact for divisiveness, grudge, and hatred, or is it based on compassion, understanding, and equality? When we consider all these factors, namely authority, moral disintegration, dehumanization, and leadership, the war between good and evil is not taking place in the outside world, but right inside us. The small choices we make every day either make the world darker, or it can also transform us into a brighter place. But it is also a fact that just as there are mechanisms that corrupt people according to the environment, the same mechanisms can also transform us into heroes. That's why let's ask ourselves this question. Where does the path to resisting evil begin? How do we hold on to moral values and not fall into the clutches of the Lucifer effect? When looking for an answer to this question, it is necessary to remember that awareness alone will not be enough. Knowing these processes mentally ensures coping with them in practice. Therefore, the concept of moral courage comes into play. Moral courage means not straying from what you know is right despite fear, oppression, or the possibility of personal loss. Raising your voice when you see oppression, extending a helping hand to those in need, or apologizing after seeing the fault is often risky. But this courage has been the driving force of great changes in history. Rosa Parks triggered a huge civil rights movement by refusing to give up her seat on the bus. She exposed many wrongs by risking the freedoms of whistleblowers who exposed corruption. So how can you develop this courage in yourself? The most important step is to first determine your own core values and frequently question whether you live in accordance with these values. Imagine that you are faced with a difficult situation, for example, at work. You witnessed injustice. What would you do? You can learn to act more decisively in real life by imagining these scenarios in your mind and rehearsing your answers. Another strategy is to establish social ties with honest and responsible people who have similar values. Such an environment warns you when you try to go astray and supports you. It strengthens the sense of solidarity. So how can you resist in environments that systematically erode moral values? At that point, it is important to develop a perspective that we can call situational awareness. Which behaviors do you accept as normalizing in the group or environment you are in? Remember that a small objection can create a kind of domino effect and lead others to question the same. However, sometimes it is easy to fall into despair. The system is so big that you may think, what good is my voice? But every step taken in the name of honesty, compassion, and compassion, no matter how small, definitely has an impact on its surroundings. Objecting to an unethical behavior in the workplace can be the first spark for the transformation of a whole corporate culture. Even showing a little more understanding and kindness to people in daily life carries a strong message against dehumanization. At this point, another big question arises before us. What if we fail? Because inevitably we all make mistakes and succumb to fear. There will be times when it contradicts its values, and there too the concept of forgiving oneself becomes important. This is not excusing the wrong we have done. On the contrary, it requires taking responsibility and learning from it. It is rebuilding ourselves to make better choices in the future by accepting the mistake. Instead of being crushed under the weight of our mistakes, when we learn from them, we can break free from the chains of the past and take more conscious and solid steps. Finally, let's go back to the most transformative insight, the fact that humanity is deeply connected. The border between good and evil does not lie between communities or nations. It does not lie between each person, but in each person's heart. As Alexander Solon said, the battle line between good and evil runs through each person's heart. This saying allows us to be both humble and empowered because we all have sides that will harm others and sides that will selflessly benefit others. However, the power to decide is in our hands. We have the opportunity to make a new choice at any moment, to be more virtuous, to block wrongdoing, and to spread compassion. Now, how can we put these ideas into practice? Let's start by realizing our own impact. Even if it is small, we can make a difference everywhere we are. Even a single act of kindness can reach unexpected places. It is in our hands to transform our environment, our workplace, or our family into environments where justice and compassion are fundamental. For example, think of Schindler, an industrialist who initially acted with the intention of making a profit, eventually risked his own fortune and life to save thousands of Jews from the Holocaust. This is a powerful example of what even one person can change in dark times. You can also take small but big steps, such as not turning a blind eye to injustice in your environment, not remaining silent, supporting those in need. Secondly, educate yourself and those around you by reading history, psychology, and philosophy to understand how people are manipulated and in which situations they are dragged into moral collapse. Then share this information with others. Do it in a healthy and constructive conversation, not as if you are lecturing them. It should not be forgotten that the movies we watch, the books we read, and the media content we follow also shape our perceptions to a great extent. We can increase our capacity for empathy and understanding by including works, stories, and narratives with different perspectives. Thirdly, focus on developing resilience. Being able to defend the truth under pressure, even when you are afraid or think you have something to lose, requires a kind of mental and emotional resilience. For this, methods such as meditation, mindfulness exercises, keeping a journal, or sharing your thoughts with trusted friends are useful. It should not be forgotten that resilience is only individual. It is strengthened not only by effort, but also by collective solidarity. Being together with people who share your values nourishes your morale and courage. Finally, let's turn to ourselves and remember this truth. The struggle between good and evil is not in an abstract area far away from us. It is experienced within ourselves every day. Every choice we make, big or small, carries an energy that spreads to the world. As a part of this energy, will we stand by discriminatory and hateful statements or by a peaceful and unifying attitude? Your daily decisions are literally shaping the world, can you imagine?